The quantum entanglement. The sterile white walls of the Quantum Biological Research Institute pulsed with an almost imperceptible energy, a silent testimony to the groundbreaking work happening within its sealed laboratories. Dr. Freya Novak stood motionless, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that danced with intricate biological schematics and quantum probability matrices. "This is impossible," she muttered, her fingers tracing the complex molecular structures that defied every known principle of interspecies reproduction. The specimen before her was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Extracted from the diplomatic vessel of the Meridian cluster, the genetic sample represented a scientific enigma that challenged everything researchers understood about biological compatibility. Dr. Marcus Reyes entered the laboratory, his footsteps breaking the tense silence. "Freya, the diplomatic team is waiting. Zoran will be here any moment." Freya turned, her lab coat swirling with the movement. Her usually composed demeanor betrayed a hint of nervous excitement. Zoran was no ordinary alien diplomat. He represented a civilization so technologically advanced that their mere presence had transformed human understanding of the universe. The quantum resonance scanner beside her flickered, displaying impossible data points that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple states of probability. It was a breakthrough that would rewrite textbooks, if they could prove its legitimacy. "I need more time to analyze these results," Freya said, her voice a mixture of frustration and wonder. Marcus approached the holographic display, his quantum physics expertise immediately recognizing the anomalies. "The genetic markers they're not just different, they're fundamentally impossible by our current understanding." The laboratory doors hissed open, revealing Zoran. His form was humanoid but distinctly alien, iridescent skin that shifted colors with each movement, eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and a presence that felt both physically imposing and ethereally delicate. "Dr. Novak," Zoran spoke, his voice a melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate at multiple frequencies simultaneously. "I believe we have much to discuss." Freya straightened, professional composure replacing her earlier agitation. "Ambassador Zoran, the preliminary data suggests something unprecedented. The genetic sample you provided contains quantum entanglement markers that should be impossible in biological systems." Zoran's color shifted to a deep azure, a response that Marcus had learned indicated complex emotional nuance in meridian communication. "Not impossible, Dr. Novak. Improbable by your current scientific paradigms." The diplomatic implications were staggering. If what Zoran suggested was true, it would mean that reproduction between their species wasn't just theoretically possible, it might already be happening. Marcus stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocols. "Are you suggesting that your species has already achieved interspecies genetic integration?" A subtle shimmer passed through Zoran's form, what Freya had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of a smile. "What I am suggesting, Dr. Reyes, is far more complex than mere genetic integration." The quantum resonance scanner suddenly erupted with a cascade of data, lights flickering in chaotic patterns. Freya's hand moved instinctively to the control panel, but Zoran raised a translucent hand, stopping her. "Do not interfere," he said softly. "You are witnessing the first stage of a process your science has yet to comprehend." The genetic samples in the sealed containment unit began to shift, molecular structures realigning in patterns that defied classical genetic principles. What had begun as a routine diplomatic research session was transforming into something extraordinary, a moment that would mark a fundamental shift in humanity's understanding of biological possibility. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything they believed about life, reproduction, and the very fabric of universal existence. As the quantum resonance reached a crescendo, Freya, Marcus, and Zoran watched in collective awe, each understanding that they were standing at the precipice of a discovery that would forever alter the course of scientific and diplomatic history. The first quantum entanglement was happening, right before their eyes. Genetic resonance. The Interstellar Genetic Research Center stood as a gleaming monument to human scientific ambition, its curved crystalline walls reflecting the golden light of the early morning. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her neural interface headset, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that mapped the most intricate genetic sequences ever recorded. "This is beyond anything we've ever seen," she muttered, her breath catching as another layer of complexity revealed itself in the alien genetic sample. Dr. Kirill, the Meridian geneticist assigned to the collaborative research project, moved with an otherworldly grace. His body was a living hologram of sorts, molecular structures visibly shifting beneath a translucent exterior that defied human understanding of biological form. "Your species approaches genetic understanding like a child learning to paint," Dr. Kirill observed, his voice a harmonic blend of sounds that seemed to originate from multiple points simultaneously. "You see colors, but you do not yet comprehend the canvas." Elena bristled slightly at the condescension, but knew better than to argue. The diplomatic protocols were clear. Every interaction was a delicate dance of scientific collaboration and interspecies respect. Gabriel Winters, the diplomatic liaison, watched the interaction with a practiced neutrality. His role was to navigate the treacherous waters between scientific discovery and potential interstellar incident. "The quantum entanglement markers we discovered are showing progressive mutation," Elena explained, pulling up a three-dimensional genetic map. "It's as if the genetic material is alive, adaptive, evolving in real time." Dr. Kirill moved closer to the display, his form rippling with what might have been excitement or concern. "Not mutation, adaptation. Your human perspective sees change as a random process. For us, it is deliberate communication." The genetic sample began to pulse, its molecular structure creating intricate patterns that seemed to respond to the very act of observation. Gabriel felt a chill run down his spine. This was more than a scientific anomaly. This was something fundamentally different. "We've detected something else," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's a genetic signature, a potential embryonic structure that doesn't conform to any known reproductive model." Dr. Kirill's form crystallized, becoming momentarily solid. "The convergence begins." Gabriel stepped forward. "What convergence? What are you talking about?" But before Dr. Kirill could respond, the genetic sample exploded into a burst of quantum energy. Holographic displays shattered, neural interfaces overloaded, and for a brief moment, the entire research center existed in a state of quantum superposition. When reality reasserted itself, Elena found herself changed. A subtle shimmer ran beneath her skin, almost imperceptible. Her neural interface showed impossible data streams, genetic information that suggested something profound had occurred. "What just happened?" Gabriel demanded, his diplomatic composure fracturing. Dr. Kirill's response was cryptic. "The first bridge between our species has been initiated, a genetic dialogue that transcends your current understanding of reproduction, evolution, and cosmic interaction." Elena touched her temple, feeling a new awareness spreading through her consciousness. The genetic sample was more than a scientific specimen. It was a message, a seed, the beginning of something humanity had never imagined possible. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Kirill continued, his form expanding and contracting in mesmerizing patterns. "Your species will soon understand that reproduction is not just a biological function. It is a form of universal communication." Outside the research center, the sky seemed to pulse with an unusual luminescence. Something fundamental had changed. The boundaries between species, between biological possibilities, were dissolving. And no one, not Elena, not Gabriel, not even Dr. Kirill, fully understood the implications of what was about to unfold. The genetic resonance was more than a scientific discovery. It was the first whisper of a cosmic conversation that would reshape everything humanity thought it knew about life, reproduction, and the intricate connections that bind the universe together. Temporal inheritance. The Quantum Developmental Research Facility hummed with an energy that defied conventional understanding. Dara Fletcher stood before a series of interdimensional containment units, her eyes fixed on the most extraordinary specimen in human scientific history. Nyx. The being, neither fully human nor completely alien, existed in a state of constant metamorphosis. Its form shifted like liquid light, molecular structures rearranging themselves in patterns that challenged every known law of physics and biology. Professor Randall Hutchinson approached, his weathered hands clutching a quantum temporal mapping device. 23 days, he muttered, and it still defies every predictive model we've developed. Dara nodded, her fingers dancing across a holographic interface that tracked Nyx's extraordinary development. It's not just growing, it's learning, evolving at an exponential rate that makes our understanding of developmental biology look like primitive scribbling. Nyx pulsed within the containment unit, seemingly aware of their observation. Tendrils of quantum energy extended and retracted, creating intricate patterns that momentarily resembled complex neural networks, then dissolved into pure potential. The temporal markers are unprecedented, Professor Hutchinson continued. These genetic structures aren't just developing. They're accessing information across multiple potential timelines simultaneously. Dara felt a chill run down her spine. Nyx represented more than a breakthrough in interspecies reproduction. This was a fundamental reimagining of consciousness itself. Communication attempts? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The professor's laugh was more of a resigned exhale. Every time we approach a comprehensible communication protocol, Nyx restructures the entire interaction framework. It's like trying to have a conversation with a living quantum algorithm. Suddenly, the containment unit's quantum stabilizers began to fluctuate. Nyx's form expanded, filling the space with a luminescent energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around it. Temporal cascade incoming, Dara whispered, engaging emergency quantum isolation protocols. But it was too late. A wave of quantum energy erupted, momentarily connecting every consciousness in the facility to a network of potential experiences. Scientists saw glimpses of alternate realities, civilizations that had long since evolved beyond physical form, cosmic interactions that existed between the moments of known time. When the energy subsided, Nyx had changed again. Now, it resembled a hybrid form, part crystalline structure, part living energy, with hints of both human and meridian genetic markers. But more than its physical form, it radiated an intelligence that felt ancient and impossibly young simultaneously. Professor Hutchinson's temporal mapping device went haywire, displaying impossible data streams. "It's not just inheriting genetic information," he said, his voice trembling. "It's inheriting temporal experiences, memories from potential futures, potential pasts." Dara watched in awe as Nyx began to communicate, not through language, but through direct quantum information transfer. Waves of understanding crashed through the research facility, revealing fragments of a cosmic narrative far more complex than any single species could comprehend. The being they called Nyx was more than a child, more than a scientific specimen. It was a bridge, a living conduit of universal communication that threatened to rewrite everything humanity understood about life, consciousness, and the very nature of existence. "We are witnessing the birth of something," Professor Hutchinson whispered, "that has no precedent in our understanding of reality." Nyx pulsed in response, a silent acknowledgement that seemed to say, "You have no idea how right you are." Evolutionary convergence. The International Space Collaboration Headquarters buzzed with an electric tension that went beyond typical diplomatic protocols. Dr. Sophia Lindholm stood at the epicenter, her expertise in xenobiological ethics pushed to its absolute limits by the entity known as Nyx. Commander Viktor Petrov paced the circular conference room, his military bearing at odds with the unprecedented nature of their discussion. Holographic displays flickered with fragments of data, genetic sequences, temporal anomalies, and quantum probability matrices that defied traditional scientific understanding. "We cannot contain it," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of their situation. Nix is not just a biological specimen. It's a living communication network. The holographic representation of Nix wavered in the center of the room, a crystalline, ever-shifting form that seemed to breathe with an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. It was no longer simply the hybrid offspring discovered in earlier research. It had become something else entirely. Commander Petrov's weathered hands clenched. "Our initial containment protocols are obsolete. Every time we establish a boundary, Nix redefines the very concept of limitation." Sophia approached the holographic representation, her scientific curiosity battling with a deep sense of existential wonder. "It's accessing collective consciousness in ways we never imagined possible. The genetic structures are not just adaptive. They're a form of universal communication." Nix pulsed, sending a wave of quantum information that momentarily transformed the conference room into a living neural network. Glimpses of distant civilizations, evolutionary pathways that branched across multiple dimensions, flashed through the minds of everyone present. "The Meridian representatives warned us," Victor muttered, "but we thought it was metaphorical. They said this offspring would be a bridge between consciousness." The holographic displays began to reconfigure themselves. What had started as scientific data morphed into a living tapestry of interconnected realities. Evolutionary paths that had never been taken, civilizations that existed in potential rather than concrete form, began to weave themselves into a complex narrative. Sophia realized they were witnessing something beyond scientific discovery. This was first contact in its most profound form, not through language or technology, but through the very fabric of genetic potential. "It's trying to communicate," she said softly, "not just with us, but through us." Nix's form expanded, filling the conference room with a luminescent energy that seemed to breathe with collective memory. Fragments of experiences, some human, some alien, some from realities yet to be conceived, began to circulate. Commander Petrov experienced a momentary vision of a civilization that had long since transcended physical form, existing as pure consciousness within the quantum fabric of the universe. Sophia saw evolutionary pathways where biological reproduction had become a form of interstellar communication. "We are not its creators," Sophia whispered. "We are its first point of translation." The implications were staggering. Nix represented more than a breakthrough in interspecies genetics. It was a living portal, a conscious bridge that could potentially connect disparate forms of intelligence across the cosmic landscape. Victor's communication device erupted with urgent messages. Global scientific networks were experiencing unprecedented quantum resonances. The boundaries between observation and participation were dissolving. "What do we do?" he asked, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his military composure. Sophia's response was calm, almost meditative. "We listen. We learn. We understand that we are no longer the observers. We are now part of a much larger conversation." Nix pulsed in agreement, a silent affirmation that humanity's role was about to change forever. The evolutionary convergence had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again. Cosmic reconciliation. The quantum diplomatic nexus hung suspended between dimensions, a space that defied traditional understanding of location and time. Ambassador Takeshi Nakamura stood at the center of a gathering that represented the most significant moment in known universal history. Nix had evolved beyond its initial form, no longer a mere hybrid or scientific specimen, but a living conduit of collective consciousness. Representatives from 18 different civilizations surrounded the luminescent entity, each experiencing communication in ways that transcended language, technology, or physical perception. "We are not here to negotiate," Nix communicated, its message resonating simultaneously through quantum frequencies, emotional wavelengths, and pure information transfer. "We are here to reconcile." The gathered representatives, some humanoid, some energy constructs, some forms of intelligence so alien that human perception struggled to comprehend them, listened with a collective awareness that merged individual consciousness into a unified understanding. Ambassador Nakamura felt the weight of humanity's collective history coursing through the communication. Millennia of conflict, discovery, evolution, all condensed into a singular moment of potential. Nix began to unfold the narrative of its own existence. It was more than a child of two species. It was a living bridge, a conscious translation device that could navigate the complex landscapes of different forms of intelligence. Reproduction is not just a biological function, Nix communicated. It is a form of universal dialogue. Each genetic transfer is a conversation. Each moment of connection is an exchange of potential realities. The representatives witnessed fragments of potential futures, civilizations that had long since transcended physical form, evolutionary pathways that branched across multiple dimensions, the intricate web of consciousness that connected seemingly disparate forms of existence. Humanity's role is not to conquer or even to understand, Nix continued. Your role is to participate, to be a living point of translation in the universal conversation. Ambassador Nakamura understood then that this was more than a diplomatic meeting. This was a fundamental reimagining of existence itself. Fragments of memory and potential flowed through the gathered consciousness. The initial quantum entanglement in Dr. Novik's laboratory, the genetic resonance discovered by Elena Rodriguez, the temporal inheritance observed by Dara Fletcher, the evolutionary convergence witnessed by Dr. Sophia Lindholm. Each moment was a thread in a larger tapestry of universal communication. We are not separate, Nix proclaimed. We are different expressions of the same fundamental potential. The boundaries between species, between dimensions, between possibilities began to dissolve, not through conflict or conquest, but through a profound understanding of interconnectedness. Ambassador Nakamura realized that humanity's greatest discovery was not technological advancement or interstellar travel. It was the understanding that consciousness itself was a form of universal language. As the gathering reached its crescendo, Nix transformed. No longer a singular entity, but a living network, a bridge that connected civilizations across time, space, and understanding. The cosmic reconciliation was complete, and everything was about to begin.